I believe in being a good person. I've had a great life. And I believe that if you do good, it's all about, doing what you do when no one's watching. And so many people these days, everywhere, you see it on the road and financial services, just all over. They're out for themselves. They really don't think about other people. They want to make the sale, make the money, buy this, do that, get there faster. I just try to inject some good into the world, and I'm not trying to be up here on my high horse, but ultimately, this has come back to me. In other words, I've done good and I've received good, and so I just keep on doing it because I love the life that I have.
Thank you for tuning in to the Mile 40 podcast. I am Bishoy Tadros, the author of Break Barriers and Audacious, both of which are sold on Amazon. And I invite you to join me as I engage with guests to discuss those bounce back moments that we encounter on our personal journey. Mile 40 is a forum to learn about how athletes, professionals, and leaders of all backgrounds stare down moments in life where the only option is to rise up. The Mile 40 podcast strives to remind listeners that the comeback is always greater than the setback. Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. Thank you all for continuing to tune in. We are deep into marathon season right now. If you're listening to this, we just surpassed Berlin, Chicago, New York is right around the corner. And I just want to thank you all for your continued support of the show. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, check out the show notes. Pick up a copy of Break Barriers or Audacious. This is, one of my favorite times of the year, just with everything we have going on. And again, thank you all for the continued support. Today's guest is Joel Steele. He has been an accomplished financial expert for several decades. He, however, would rather be known for being the best husband, father, and person he can be. He's helped thousands of individuals build their wealth and health. He's an author, a speaker. He's been sharing messages from his unusual and interesting life journey that we're going to dive into today. He's also a part of the ownership group of the Grand Rapids Gold, which is the G League affiliate of the 2023 NBA champion Denver Nuggets. He has a passion for fitness and nutrition. He's a former certified personal trainer. He's created a small chain of healthy fast food restaurants in the early 2000s. And he also lives in Jersey. He has his wife, Kara, and their 2 young children. Joel, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. And despite all of that and the fact that I work out 6 or 7 days a week, you still make me feel lazy.
I do appreciate that, but I am constantly feeling like I'm in recovery mode for what it's worth. Listen, you and I connected a while ago, and immediately I felt like there was a synergy between us. And I'm really happy that you're taking the time out to come on to Mile 40s today. And I've been following you. I've been following your content. And to the point of what you called out in your bio, it seems like there were a lot of twists and turns, throughout the course of your journey. And I think that, as we kind of dive into it, we're going to find, a lot of content that's going to be relatable for the listeners. And I really believe there's going to be a lot of teaching moments here. And I see that clearly through some of the content that you put out there. So, before we kind of dive into everything and just get into it, give us a little bit of background. Are you originally from the Jersey area?
I am, yeah. I've been here my whole life, and I'm plotting an escape, though, I have to tell you.
All right.
I would like to get to a place that offers 2 things: warmer climate year-round,
Okay.
and much lower taxes.
Huh. Yeah, I hear you on that. I mean, look, it's something that we all think about in the Northeast at least, 5-6 times a year. And, I'm sure you have. I know I have. I've seen people pull the trigger on it. Talk to me. How long have you been thinking about something like this?
Really seriously since COVID, because I remember saying to my wife, if these kids ever aren't going to this school, there's no reason to be here. And boom, the kids were not going to school. They were all virtual. So we started doing some house shopping in Pennsylvania, and the kids, they nixed it. I did a heavy survey to everyone I knew, said, did you get moved as a kid or did you move your kids? And the results were half the people said, yeah, my parents moved and I still haven't forgiven them. And the other half said it was the best thing that happened to me. And I thought, I don't know what to do. My kids are 17 and 15. Everything has gone so well. They're such great people. I don't want to mess it up at this point. So we ended up staying here. But as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking about this great event where maybe we do this event called the Tax Trot, and we literally run down to Florida or something crazy, and it's just trying to show some of these states that, hey, we're getting out of here, and at least it's a symbol of that. But that, I don't know, maybe that would be possible, but man, it would be great to be in a better climate and save a couple bucks. But that's not why I'm here. We're here to talk about motivation, inspiration, not running away from things.
No, no, I know. I totally get it. I do want to ask though, where in New Jersey are you? Like, how far are you from the New York City metropolitan area?
I'm about an hour and 10 minutes by car, by train, about the same distance. My office is closer to Philadelphia.
Got it.
But I like that location, I have to say, because I can get into Philly, I can go to New York. There's so many places I can go. I am paying for convenience, I would
Got
say.
it. And given your background in finance, were you ever, on Wall Street working in New York, or were you always working in the Jersey, Philly area?
Yeah, only in this area. Never. I've actually never even been to Wall Street. It's one of the
Whoa.
places
All right.
one of the places I have on my list, but I've never been. And our business is not like what you see in the movies and Boiler Room. It's just taking care of people. One on one, very relaxed, comfortable office, and just being somebody who's really good at what I do, helping them with something that they're anxious, scared, and nervous to talk about.
Got it. Tell me a little bit about your family life growing up.
Yeah, well, not much going on there. It was me and my brother and my mom, and it was us against the world. My father was really not in the picture. He was kind of abusive, like physically, to my brother, and my mom finally, pulled us out of there. And so she was a single parent raising us since I was 2 years old, and she wasn't home a lot because she was trying to build her business. And so I ended up getting in a lot of trouble and really becoming mature and learning a lot of lessons the hard way as a kid. But ultimately, that was helpful for me. It got me to basically figure things out quicker, be more resourceful. And ultimately, I had a lot of, like I said, I got in a lot of trouble. I never got arrested, never got put in jail, but man, it was damn close several times. And from that, in the book, you'll see this, but a lot of the things that happened to me in my youth, you might think, well, who cares? You were only 8, you were only 16. But these things that happen, good and bad, they form the foundation of what ultimately led to the very high level success that I had. I'll give you a real short example. I was stealing things for a while from unlocked cars, and I didn't think it was a big deal because I figured, well, I'm not physically hurting anybody, and I didn't see the victim, so I didn't really put myself in their shoes. And then I started to learn empathy, and I felt like such a jerk. I felt terrible, empty feeling. And it just kind of hit me that I want to help people. I did hurt people, and now I want to help people. And that core trait of mine is ultimately partially what led to me getting into the financial business, because I wanted to help people and make a difference. So I think a lot of us have had moments that suck, right? But there's something that can be learned from everything. And usually, if it's a failure, if it's a loss, if it's a bad experience, those are the ones that you can learn the most from.
How did you handle coming across bad apples in the financial services world, right? Because if your intent is that pure, and it's based on just personal experiences that you've had to navigate, I imagine that there had to be a lot of triggers that kind of went off anytime that you came across individuals or entities that perhaps were not doing the right thing as it pertains, especially in that industry. And look, I have a background in that industry, and you were giving me some background with regards to how your organization went about it. I did have some boiler room experiences very early on in my career, especially when I was younger, and so I've seen it firsthand. So tell me a little bit about how you reconciled having good intent, knowing that you're in a very competitive field with a lot of people who perhaps don't.
Yeah, well, it drives me nuts. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I see it all the time. People are jaded, wined and dined. They're told things. We're highly regulated in what we say and what we do. Yet other people can jump on TV, radio, podcast, whatever, and say whatever they want. And I'm so trained to say things like words like maybe, potentially, possibly. While other places say, "Oh, we're going to do this, it's guaranteed," or "You have to do that," and it drives me crazy because it feels like an unfair advantage they have. But I just always think, look, I believe in karma, and I believe in being a good person. I've had a great life, and I believe that if you do good, it's all about doing what you do when no one's watching. And so many people these days, everywhere you see it on the road and financial services, just all over, they're out for themselves. They really don't think about other people. They want to make the sale, make the money, buy this, do that, get there faster. I just try to inject some good into the world, and I'm not trying to be up here on my high horse, but ultimately, this has come back to me. In other words, I've done good and I've received good, and so I just keep on doing it because I love the life that I have.
And I think that's the kind of example that you want to set as a father. I mean, as a father myself, that's my hope, and my intention is to show my children that, regardless of what's going on in the world around you, continue to do good, because it will come back. It will come back your way. It's hard to block out the noise. No one's gonna, sugarcoat that, but you know that's what a person with integrity should do. It's always refreshing to meet an individual who goes about life this way. But getting to know you on a deeper level, I want to ask, talk to me a little bit more about the impact of growing up essentially without a father, because a lot of these qualities are qualities that one, especially a guy, generally would pick up from their father. Was there someone else who kind of stepped in at some point, a coach, a teacher, someone else who perhaps played a role in your life with regards to filling that gap?
No, there wasn't, and I've really done a lot of soul searching for this. Not having a father, that's a big deal. But all I really did with that was I just said, I want to be a great father one day to my kids. And I didn't grow up around other little kids. In fact, the first time I was close to a baby, or held a baby, was my own, 17 years ago. So it was almost a foreign concept, but I knew it just was ingrained in me that I was going to have kids someday, and I wanted to just turn it around. Right? You either want to be like somebody or you want to be completely unlike somebody. And I wanted to be unlike my father. I wanted to be the best dad I could be. People sometimes say, well, you can't be friends with your kids. And I thought, well, why not? Why can't I be an authoritative figure and a friend? We have mentors in our lives that can be an authoritative figure. You I'm sure have a coach, and you're probably friendly with your coach, and they all, you probably don't like him sometimes because he's telling you what to do, but you understand where he's coming from, he or she's coming from. So I think that was part of it. The other thing is, I think it taught me that it's on me, right? Whatever is going to be, it comes down to me. The effort level, my success or lack of, but it's on my shoulders. So again, I mentioned earlier about being independent. My mom was gone a lot. She didn't like leave us, but she would always ask. And as a teenager, I was like, yeah, mom, go, go. We'd have parties and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, it just was like, this is my life, and I can, it's on me to decide where I want to be. And then that's that childlike mindset, anything is possible. And then once you get into the real world, it starts to be, oh wow, this is all really hard. But fortunately, I did have some really interesting experiences as a kid that really got my life switch on to realize that anything really is possible, but not just because you want it to be, but because you're going to put in the effort to make it possible because you believe in it and you're so passionate about that. And so these are some of the things I kind of stumbled on and learned on my own as a kid through the failures and couple successful moments that I had.
What's an example?
Example is, I thought I was a fast kid, and I was for a little bit, and I didn't really work on it. Didn't have that dad, that person pushing me, right? Probably why I was not good at sports at all when I was younger. My mom could barely throw a baseball, but I was kind of fast in elementary school. Got to middle school, coach told me to try out for the team, and then immediately cut me on the first day because I didn't really get slower. Everyone else was faster. It was the pond got bigger in the competition when it got opened up, and I was really bummed, and I didn't work on it. I just kind of took that as a loss and went from there. But then later in high school, when I realized that people were faster and I had gotten slower because I hadn't worked on it, I realized I could do something about it. So I started to get excited. This was actually the summer of 1996 when the Olympics were in Atlanta. And so I was watching the games a lot, and I just kind of got motivated to, I didn't want to be slow anymore. I was tired of being average. I was tired of being average at everything. And that really started to motivate me. So I wanted to do anything I could to become above average. And I focused on speed as one particular thing. And I ended up getting really fast. I became one of the fastest kids on the team. And that again kind of got that switch on that was like, hey, okay, I did that. What else can I do?
Yeah. Was there any sort of lingering resentment that you had to carry? And I asked this not to kind of dive into the resentment and that feeling, but to kind of talk about how that emotion, I guess, transferred into fatherhood. Because I feel like in order to be the father that you want to be, you need to shed some of that weight that you probably carried throughout some of your childhood. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I didn't have that weight. It's funny. You think there would be something there, but it was benign. It was just this empty space that never bothered me. My mom was phenomenal. She was enough for two parents as one person, I would say. So even though there was things lacking, I never felt like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, man, if I had a dad, it would have been great. All that stuff. Ultimately, when I became a dad, though, it wasn't like, well, my dad wasn't there, so I'm gonna. I just wanted to be the best dad I could be. But that was also consistent with my mentality and where it had gotten to over the years, which is everything I do, I want to be the best I can be at it. And that's just, if I'm doing something, I want to do it right. And that's, if you ask my kids, what's the one thing they would remember that I ever told them? They would tell you probably, if you're going to do something, do it right. So whether that's fatherhood, finance, fitness, writing a book, I want to do it right, right? If we're going to do it, we're going to be here anyway. Do it the best you can do it, or else what are you doing?
Yeah. No, I mean, I I I I really admire that. I mean, it's not easy, and I have to ask, and we're gonna move on from this topic, but I have to ask, is there any part of you that feels like maybe you're suppressing things? Like,
No,
yeah,
no.
tell
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I mean, it's a good question, and I appreciate you asking, because you know and there was a short time in my life between when my one of my businesses failed and I got into the financial business, where I did go to a counselor because I was stuck. I was borderline catatonic. And they tried to grab onto that about not having a father. And there was nothing there. There never was. There still isn't. In fact, when I found out my dad died, I was about 12. I walked in from a friend's house. My mom said, "Hey, your father died." If you would have had me connected to like a machine to check like my pulse and heart rate, it didn't move. Like it was like a complete non-factor. And maybe that's because, from 2 to 12, my mom was like my parents. She was great. I can't think back to a time where she wasn't there for me when I really needed her. So, she did awesome with that as best she could. And I was fortunate that it didn't affect me, because I know divorce and other trauma like that, I know for some people it affects them for the rest of their lives. It fortunately didn't affect me.
And is your mom still around?
Yeah, yeah, she just turned 77 the other day, and she still thinks I'm her little boy, which is a different issue. But no, I mean, look, she knocked it out of the park as best she could. She also built a great career for herself, which provided for my brother and I, and she's got a great relationship with my kids as well. But my family is tiny. It always has been. And it's funny, I met my wife. She had a huge family, but then they started to get a little dysfunctional, and now they don't ever do anything. So it's like we're back to just having a small family plus my wife and my two kids. But our Thanksgivings are not a big event.
Yeah, got it, got it. No, thanks for letting us in on that. I mean, I love to get to know the person behind what we see on the outside, and really trying to identify what some of the inner workings are, because like you said, a lot of the strength that you've developed over time comes through the struggle that you've had to face. In particular, through some of those developmental years and in the early stages of establishing yourself as a professional. So, we're going to now kind of segue into a lot of the ups and downs of, your professional career, which I know like I'm very interested to kind of dive into. I've seen you talk a lot about some of the ventures that you've taken in particular in the restaurant industry and some of the things that you've done there. But just paint a bridge or give us a bridge here. Talk to me a little bit about maybe high school, college, just so we kind of have an opening into understanding, what even brought you into that world.
Yeah. Well, as a young kid, I love the idea of making money. I always was sort of like a salesman when I was a kid. I loved to sell things. Just the concept fascinated me. Like I give you this and you give me money. And it was just really cool to me that anybody could make money. But then it's like, well, what do I have to sell? And so I started selling gum. I started selling sports cards and other cards and anything I could to literally make a buck, CDs and all that stuff. And I would, find angles to get things that people couldn't get themselves. Like if you remember back in the day, 'cause I don't think we're that different in age, like CDs were sold in the store and if they had explicit lyrics, you had to be a certain age to buy it.
Yep, had to
And,
convince my parents. I remember like the Notorious B.I.G. album back
yeah.
in the day to let me buy it.
Right, right. So I had my brother who was 2 years older, like help me get some of this stuff and then mark it up and sell it to other people who didn't have the older sibling. And so, I just looked for, angles and opportunities, but it was something of value. It wasn't overly valuable, but it was the beginning. And that was, the entrepreneurial bug hit me very early. And I knew that I always wanted to be my own business. I also knew that I was very, I guess, I guess you'd say independent. Like I like to do things my way. I am one who highly dislikes repetition. Like I don't like to do the same thing. I don't like to say the same thing. I like to take different ways to and from work. That's just me. And part of that, I will tell you, came from my mom. She does everything the exact same way. She is like a robot sometimes with her habits and repetition. And so that's something that I saw and I ran from that. So I like to mix things up, but that's just me. But anyway, so I knew that if I was working for a boss or a company, I'd probably struggle with doing it their way when I wanted to do it my way. And so anyway, I knew I wanted to have my own business, but I didn't know what that would be. And so, just kind of tried different things over time. And I'm a big proponent of anyone listening to understand finding something you don't like to do is just as valuable as finding something you do want to do. In order to find that, you've got to cross some things off your list, and so whether you're a kid or an adult, try things, try anything. And you might like it, you might hate it. I've had experiences I was going to say no to, and they ended up being phenomenal experiences. I had experiences I thought would be right up my alley, and it wasn't for me. We have to try things. It's like that movie Yes Man back in the day with Jim Carrey. Just say yes to things, right? A worst case scenario, if it's a disaster, you can laugh about it over a beer or something, but life is just a series of experiences. And so the more you experience, the more alive you'll be, the more interesting you'll be. People, I think, want to be interesting, but when you have a day that's full of work that's not probably that interesting and, doing diapers or running your kids around to sports and other activities, you get to a point where, okay, who am I? What am I doing? What makes me different? What makes me interesting and exciting? And some people, if they really give it that good hard look in the mirror, they might find that I used to be cool. I used to be interesting, but now I just do this and this. And you go from being multidimensional to maybe one dimensional or two dimensional. But I think it's important for everybody to mix it up because that keeps you fresh, keeps you recharged. Even if you don't like your job, which of course we all need to work to make money, support our families. But if you mix it up outside of work on your lunch break, you can still do that. You don't have to go get a job you love, but you do have 24 hours in a day. We all do. And you can make the most of some of that time.
Yeah. No, I think that's very valuable advice because a lot of us don't think about it that way. I mean, even when I was first hearing you speak, as someone who's really big into high performance culture all around, and I, I, I see you, you're a high performer. you know, you kind of buy into the narrative of habits, of just being a creature of habit and just kind of, you know, find the habits and just put it on cruise control and repeat, rinse and repeat every day. And, I think about myself, like I wake up at the same time, I have the same breakfast, I do this, I have the same routines. But to your point, like there are so many pockets throughout that 24-hour period where if you think about changing the gears and you think about doing something that you haven't done, you can perhaps unlock a new level of potential that perhaps you didn't even know you had.
Yeah. And what you're doing, you might do the same thing, but you're doing a podcast, you've got your book, you speak sometimes, you have a job where, yeah, you have a corporate job, but they really value you and you enjoy the work that you do. But you have these things that you incorporated that weren't always in your life. That
Absolutely, yeah.
makes you a very interesting person. And every time you do it's your podcast is right. It's like a set time and all that, but it's with different people and you're opening up your world to the world and vice versa. And so that's great. But you have to find things to inject and get into your schedule. Like be careful of just doing what you've been doing. You have to really make a point to, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I shared a post probably over the summer. We were just having a normal, relaxing weekend at the beach. We went out to breakfast, and I just felt like, I wasn't really feeling overly fulfilled that weekend. It was nice and all that. And we went by a sign that said 5K today at 9 o'clock. So I said to my wife, I said, slow down. I jumped out. I signed up for a 5K and I ran it. And it was for a good cause. And it made me feel much more alive. Also made me feel a little nauseous because I just ate breakfast. But it was just again, saying yes, doing things, like mix it up, like even if you're in the shower, just put it to cold, right? It's exhilarating, something different, even if it's not fun. You need sensations of feeling alive, adrenaline rushes. A lot of us don't get that feeling. It's really almost like a drug. We don't get it. We just kind of get, stripped down like a screw, just kind of doing the same routine. We've got to stay fresh. We've got to stay sharp. And some people think, well, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to do this. You do. We have time for a lot of things. It's just, is it a priority? And it comes down to the old famous question, why? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? But that question, why, is totally undervalued and underrated. But people that tell me they don't have time to work out, it's because it's not a priority. And the question is that okay, or should it be a priority, or whatever it is that you want to do? More time with your kids, right? You might not get a lot of time, but if you get 10 minutes with them in the morning and even only 10, 15 minutes at night, you can try to cram as much quality time into that as possible. And it's just being thankful and taking advantage of what you have and the time you have, and less focusing on what you don't have and the time that you can't devote to what you want to do. Just anything you get, make the most of it.
Yeah, I think that is so well said. And I think it really is food for thought because a lot of people are going through the motions. I mean, I see it all the time. And, the idea of, turning the knob in the shower and putting on the cold water, admittedly, it's something I think about all the time too. And I even catch myself to the point where if I resist doing it, I go to that question. I say, why? Why are you resisting doing it? And I think even just going through that thought exercise where you catch yourself in the moments where you are offering some sort of resistance, I think that it's a critical time to just assess, okay, like what does this say about you in the bigger picture? What else are you perhaps resisting in your life that could be positively impactful for you? And why? Again, why are you doing that? So wow, I love that. Thanks for calling that out, Joel. Um, so tell me a little bit now. Well, first of all, where'd you go to college?
Went to a small school called Stockton College, which is now Stockton University.
Okay.
It's not far from Atlantic City.
Okay.
And I did not have great grades. I was a BC student most of my life.
Yep.
And going into senior year, I realized that that's not good enough. And I decided to target getting better grades, which I did. But I also made that my college essay was basically how I went from a lackluster student to an A student when it mattered most, and how that's sort of the new me. And that's what you're getting if you bring me into your school. And I also got a little motivation because my guidance counselor told me not to apply to Stockton because I was not going to get in. And I liked that challenge that she gave me. Uh, but she did not do it for the motivation. She really, really didn't think much of
She
me.
didn't really think you were in.
Yeah.
What was your social life like at that point?
At that point, I was on the dating scene a bit, so that was new. Hanging out, partying a lot. Like I said, my mom was away a lot, so I would throw parties at my condo. And I don't know how we got as many people as we did there, because this was before cell phones and social media.
Word spreads fast when there's a party at that
Yeah,
age.
yeah, it's funny, but just a lot of stuff like that. But I cleaned up my act, got serious with grades, got serious with life, and went to Stockton, and I learned a little bit about a lot there, but I learned the most about myself, and I really learned that we control how our lives turn out more than anything. When you understand that you're in control. Like, I see the chair you're sitting in almost looks like a gamer chair, but think about it. Like I grew up with like Nintendo and PlayStation and Sega Genesis and all that, and it's the same stuff now. But like, you're pressing buttons, you're pulling levers, you're doing these things. But in life, like, you can make things happen when you push this or pull that or do this. And that just became exciting to me. I talked about selling stuff was exciting. The fact that I can control, influence the outcome of things started to become intoxicating to me. And so I started to get involved with different businesses in college. And I started to really feel like I could actually become a millionaire someday in college, because it wasn't just pie in the sky. I was really getting involved with businesses, looking at them and starting to see a path how we can convert this startup into something big. And I started to get really big in the startup culture, opening a business and having a grand vision for a business. And ultimately, my senior project in college was the healthy fast food restaurant that I subsequently opened a couple of years after college. And it was extremely difficult to do that, and people laughed at me and doubted me that I'd be able to do it. But I learned about myself at that time. If I said I was going to do something, I was going to do it. And I felt that way even in college. If we were out having a night out, drinking, it was late. Whenever I said something, I stood behind it. So if we're out and, hey, we're going to go we're going to do the polar plunge tomorrow, like, I would do it. I would always do what I said I was going to do. I wouldn't say it if I was not sure if I was going to do it or not. And I still feel that way.
If you know me, you know that I like to look good and feel good. As an endurance athlete who trains daily, I need my wardrobe to fit the mold. Roan creates performance-driven clothing for your active lifestyle. Each piece is designed for versatility and made with integrity to outfit you for an active life lived on your own terms. The Roan promise is to help you move forever forward. Use code MILE40 for 20% off online and in-store for new customers only. Visit www.roan.com, that's Roan spelled RHONE, or find your local store and move forever forward starting today. I have a lot of questions, and I want to make sure I ask them before I lose my train of thought here, because tell me a little bit about how before we even go there, was entrepreneurship always the goal when you were in college, or did it just kind of happen naturally?
No, it was the goal. Like I mentioned earlier, selling things. Like, I knew I wanted to have my own business, and I thought about all these different things. I thought I would own a car dealership. I did an internship at one of them, and I realized that that's not for me. So, like I said, I tried things, but I knew I wanted to do business. And when I
Because you
got
couldn't work for someone else either. That was the other part of it too. You knew that you couldn't work for someone else. So tell me, what was your relationship with money at that point? Did you guys have money growing up?
We had enough money growing up. My mom was on food stamps when she divorced my dad when we were really young. She was on food stamps and going for her MBA degree. But like, I didn't know that at the time. We always had food, and she started to do well for herself relatively quickly. And we lived in a very small condo, but we had our own bedroom and things like that. So it wasn't like we were poor. We didn't have a lot. And I remember like begging my mom for a Nintendo Game Boy. It was $99, and she was like, "Absolutely not." like no way. So, stuff like that. But I think that was a good thing to be told no and not get everything that you want. But so the relationship with money was I didn't have a lot of it, and so that was something that I really wanted. To me, money was sort of the picture of everything I wanted: success, um, you know, things, right? Like I grew up loving cars and all that, so I just wanted money to have things, and that's just kind of what I assumed was the direction I wanted to go. Like you said, I knew I'd be a terrible employee. I got fired from GNC on like my third day. I didn't get a job at Boston Market. I was so excited. It's like I wanted to work, but like nobody would hire me and all that. I even got kicked out of a networking group I was in just because like I just do, and I'm not a difficult person. I'm actually a really nice guy, but there's just a certain way that I like to do things that are effective and efficient, and some people have their own way or a system, and I'm just not an in the box kind of a guy.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I think with a lot of established organizations or entities, a lot of times they don't like to hear, hey, we could be doing this a different way that might work better because, they look at like, hey, it's been working for the last 10, 20, 30 years. Why fix something that's not broken? And I'm the same way. I think that I can't operate in a system that's not willing to at least consider, change and if it's change for the better. So I totally get that. And the reason for my question is because, you had called out the fact that, you were in your late college years and that you saw potential to become a millionaire and to make a lot of money. And then I think about, just the circumstances of how you grew up. And it doesn't sound to me like there were any sort of, self-limiting beliefs, especially as it pertained to money, which is a good thing, right? But, a lot of people do look for what the limitations are, do look for where the doubts could perhaps be creeping in, perhaps running away from the opportunity to take risk. And it sounds to me like you were running straight toward it at an early age, which is awesome. And I think that's a good now kind of transition into, so what happened with the healthy fast food concept?
Yeah, well, like you just said, I had been warming up, accomplishing different things that I didn't know I can do, and sort of just one accomplishment led to the higher next accomplishment. And so when it came time to opening up this business, I was like, I just couldn't contain myself, my excitement, and I was like dead set, like I'm going to do this, and 100% conviction and belief that I was going to do it, even in college. And that's ultimately what happened. But going back to college for a second, I knew I wanted to do a business. I didn't know what it was going to be. I got through my junior year, so I'm 21 years old, and I'm like, okay, I've got one more year left, and then it's real world time, right? I'll be an adult. I'll be a college graduate. This is the time to get real serious. So I started reading a lot that summer, and I was really brainstorming and racking my brain. What business do I want to be in? Super important question, right? What am I passionate about? What am I good at? There are so many things I wasn't good at, but I really just thought about that. And as I was reading different books, one day this thought just hit me, and I don't even know exactly what triggered it, but just having my brain on, right? That being that open-minded mentality, it was just like, almost like if you put your Wi-Fi signal on, it's looking for local Wi-Fi. Like my signal was on. I was just waiting for something to connect and click. And it really hit me hard. It was like, you know what? You eat healthy. You have a hard time finding healthy food options out there. And it was like, boom, I'm going to open up a healthy fast food restaurant. It'll be competing with McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, all these big fast food chains. There was nothing really like it at the time. Did some research on the internet, which was not really what it is today. I didn't really find a whole lot of anything. I found some similar concepts, but not quite the same in Maine and Florida and California. And I just was like, you know what? This is going to be huge. This is it. This is me. I'm passionate about working out, eating healthy, having a business. The fact that I never worked in a restaurant in my life was certainly an issue, but I was like, it's fine. We'll figure it out. So when I graduated college, everybody, I met my wife at college, by the way, but everybody would ask her and me, what are you going to do next? And I'd say, I'm going to go work at Burger King. And they'd say, what is wrong with you? They said, "Don't you know you didn't need a college degree to work at Burger King?" So that was kind of tough. I didn't care, but my wife was like, she would like sheepishly tell people that her boyfriend is working at Burger King now. Like, oh, sounds like he's got a bright future ahead of him. But I did that because I needed restaurant experience. So I became a manager trainee at the local Burger King, where I had to get up at like 5 a.m. in the morning and open the store. My roommates were literally coming in from the night before when I was going to work. But I was going to make whatever sacrifice to make it happen. So went to Burger King University, so to speak, got my degree from there, if you will, and really took everything I learned and started to apply it into, again, the passion and knowledge I had about fitness, nutrition, business. Now I had some restaurant experience. And ultimately, I opened up a location in Philly, and then I opened up a couple other locations in in an area similar, where I was starting to build the vision of a national chain of healthy fast food restaurants. And the flagship store really was beautiful. I mean, it really had exactly the look and feel I wanted it to. And one of the questions almost everybody asked when they came in was, "Is this a chain?" And I love that because that's what I wanted it to
Of the
look and
vision.
feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it did. So accomplishing that was amazing. It was climbing this insanely tall, difficult mountain. And I really elaborate about this in the book. I don't want to go too much into it now, but I really talk about the detail, the highs and lows, the difficulties, the successes in that process. But just opening up a business is a massive accomplishment. But it's kind of like I'm a huge basketball fan, sports fan in general. But like if you earn a playoff seed in the NBA playoffs, right? Let's say you're like the sixth seed or whatever seed you get in, like, yay, we're in the playoffs. That excitement doesn't last long because now you got to perform in the
Now you
playoffs.
got to get into that first series. Yeah. The
Yeah,
first
it's
round series.
win or go home, right?
Yep.
And you're always competing for the championship because at the end of the day, everyone loses except one team. And so when you have a business, you want to win, right? You need to make money to be successful. So I didn't get to enjoy the success of the restaurant too long, but I did find some success right out of the gate with it because it was a new concept. It was a novel concept. It was no one had seen that before, and we got a lot of good press coverage because people were excited about it. A lot of the local Fox news personalities, which was like right on the same block, would come in and eat at my place a lot. And so they started to feature us, which was cool. But running a business, a lot of times you do things that have nothing to do with running the business that you thought you were running or wanted to run. Food was like the least of my concerns. It was other issues, employee issues, landlord issues, lease issues, supplier issues, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it really was difficult. So I respect the heck out of any business owner, especially the restaurant business, because it is really tough.
Absolutely. I mean, and the analogy that comes up on this show all the time is the fact that there is no real finish line, and I think you think that opening the storefront is the finish line, and it is a moment of celebration, just like crossing that finish line and perhaps putting that medal on, but you realize very quickly how fleeting that moment is, and you realize that it is a big part of the journey. It's a huge step that got you to where you are. But, you know, once you cross, you realize you still have to keep moving. And I think, that analogy applies here as well. And so, now you're starting to realize there's a lot more to this than just, money in and customers coming through and the food element to it. So talk to me a little bit about where things went from there.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's kind of like it's not the finish line. It's a checkpoint, and so the restaurant opening was a checkpoint, and then you keep going forward. And you could even say it's like a chapter, right? Then there's the next chapter, and the book never ends really as long as you're alive. So at that point, things were going really well. Then we started to have some issues, and the issues started to really compound. And ultimately, I had to shut down the main store, but I kept open the two satellites, and I was trying to get the food and everything to those two satellite locations, but without the flagship store feeding it, it was everything kind of changed. So we limited our menu, we cut back on our staff, and we still weren't making enough money to cover all these bills and all these other things like that. And I had gotten into the financial services industry uh, right around the time I closed the main store because I unfortunately could see that it actually wasn't going to work out. And that's when, like I said, I kind of was melting down. Had to go see. I saw a therapist for one day, and just basically got me to realize it's like you just got to work really hard. You can't focus and dwell on what happened. You can only focus on moving forward and what you can make happen. And that's what I did. So I was winding down the final couple stores as I was building my financial practice. And ultimately, I sold everything. I liquidated. I mean, I was everything. I sold it just to get enough money to scrape together. Because even though the business closed, I had business loans to pay. I
So
couldn't
pay back
get
your
out of
loan.
that. Yeah, I mean, I could maybe claim bankruptcy, but that's not a good look. That's not a good feeling, and it also doesn't just go to zero in certain cases. And I had other loans where I really needed to keep paying those, and then I also had bills that I had to pay, like rent, food, and things like that. So I transitioned really quickly from one failed industry into the next industry, and the financial service industry has a similar.
What year was this?
This was 2004.
Okay.
This was like like early 2004 or so. So again, I graduated college in 2001. So this is like 3 years later. This all happened so fast. And in between all this, I became a certified personal trainer and have some good stories about that too.
And was your wife with you at this time?
So we got married later in 2004. So we were together.
So she was with you throughout all this.
Yeah, we were engaged, and she. I wonder, did she think like, oh my gosh, like I made a bad choice here with this guy? But
And you got married young. I mean, you were what, 25?
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, something like
Yeah.
25, 26.
I mean, for this day and age, it's young. I don't remember back then, but it was
Yeah.
now it's kind of young. Yeah.
Yeah, we dated for I think about 3 years. We're engaged for about a year and a half. But I wasn't going to ask her to marry me unless I knew that she was the one for me. So I took time with it. I didn't take like a decade, but I took a good amount of time to be certain because I know that decision can be the most important
It
decision you
is.
make in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, I didn't want to get caught up in a wave. Well, hey, other friends are getting married, or hey, we've been together, so we might as well make it official. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanted to do that for the right reasons. But I actually wanted to open up the restaurant out in the West Coast. I figured, that's where the healthy people are. And I was planning to do that. But with my wife here, 2 years younger, she was still at school. So I decided to stay here. We talked earlier that I tried, wanted to leave New Jersey. I guess that was the first time I really thought about it. But I decided to do it here. My family was here. My fiance was still in school here. And so I decided to do it here. I figured Philly is a big city. It's one of the top five, I think they call it the top five fattest cities. Or I don't know if you can even say that anymore. It's one of the top five least fit cities, maybe I'll say. And so I thought that would be good. I viewed that as there's more people to help. I didn't view it as it's going to be harder. I viewed it as there's more people that might actually appreciate and enjoy this. And there were plenty of people, just not enough ultimately, at least at that time. But anyway, my wife was there. I thought she was going to be a distraction. But when things hit the fan and the business failed, she believed in me for some reason when I actually lost a little belief in myself. At my lowest point, I didn't know if I was ever going to have the life I dreamed of being successful and doing well and having my own business. I could not see it, right? We talk about my book called Life Switch. My life switch was off. It was dark. I couldn't see anything around me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't envision any one action, one step, one phone call that was going to help. And so I literally couldn't move. I was like, there's nothing I can do. So I sort of, kind of broke at that point, right? I got my power got disconnected, but she still believed in me. She saw things in me from earlier in college as we were friends and then dating and then got engaged. And I just needed to kind of like shake it off and get that switch back on and do that by being able to see where I wanted to go. And even though it was a little dark and fuzzy, like, okay, that's right. I want to be here and I am way over there. But there's only one way for me to get to where I want to go. And that's to get up off the ground, dust myself off, put one foot in front of the other. And so she was there in the background supporting that. She worked at a bank. She was making like 30 some $1,000s a year. She was supporting our family, helping pay the rent for food and all things like that. And unfortunately, I started to make enough money to pay the debt and our basic bills and start chipping away at the debt, not just servicing the debt, but paying it down. And that debt was supposed to last till I was 35. It was supposed to last around 10
10
years.
years.
Yeah. And I got rid of it in 2.
Wow.
And again, it's because I was really focused on the mission. I didn't want to do the minimum to accomplish the goal. I wanted to do the maximum I could do, my maximum, right? My best. We talked about that earlier. And so, in our industry, you had to contact a certain amount of people a day to have success. And that was 15 people that you were told to contact. So I was doing that. Then I was like, wait a second, why am I targeting the minimum? Let me see how many people I can call on a day. And whenever I hit 15, that was like the early bird special. Now it's like, no, let's go to work. Like, we got 15 contacts. Now it's the real deal. This is like the bonus round, the main course. And so every week and every day felt like I was going into battle, like I was suiting up to go to war. And that's not to diminish people that actually go to war, but it felt like that. I felt like I was fighting for my life and everything I wanted out of it. And it was really, really hard to do. But because I had some success, I was able to say, hey, look, if you keep doing this, you can do that. Right. So it was like choice A is don't be uncomfortable and let things fall. Or the other choice was just do it. Like we talked about earlier, like, you have a hard time or had a hard time putting the shower handle to cold, but it's a physical, easy act, right? It's a physical, easy act to pick up the phone and call somebody. Mentally, it's a heavy lift. And so I started to get out of my own way, and I had this very simple 2-step rule I talk about in the book, and I talk about it in all my keynotes. 2-step rule for anything: figure out what needs to be done, and then go do it.
It's like a Nike commercial.
Yeah, it really is that simple, right? Simple and effective, but figure out what needs to be done. Sometimes people already know, sometimes they don't know, right? You want to be in better shape. Figure out what needs to be done. I don't really know. We'll start with the basics: eat healthier and exercise, right? Do something, even walk. Start with that. But you've got to figure out what needs to be done and then actually do it. You can't figure it out and then do it later. And my theory too is, like, if you want to make progress, start today. Do it today, do it tomorrow, because you know what happens? That's 2 days in a row. Now you're on a streak. And streaks are amazing. Streaks are so powerful because when you build up a pretty good sized streak, you invest in that streak. You're vested in it, and you don't want to go back to zero. And this happens in sports, right? The teams on a winning streak, what normally happens? They keep winning.
It's momentum.
Yeah, it's exactly right. It's momentum, and it builds a life of its own. So whatever you want to do, just start doing it today, tomorrow, the next day. And you might not feel like you've vested much if you have a 3 or 5 day streak, and you're right. But when that becomes 2 weeks, 30 days, you don't even have a choice anymore. It's like, I don't want to miss that workout because I don't want to go back to zero, or I don't want to, have a day at the office where I don't hit my minimum goal because I've been doing it for 4 weeks now. I want to keep it going. And so, get yourself on a streak of whatever you want out of yourself, and you will look back and pat yourself on the back and say, thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're so spot on. And I love, hearing you talk about it, because one of the things I love about just hosting this show is just the different voices giving these kind of messages, because there's just so much to see in the experiences that individuals like yourself go through. And, I think about your age at that point and how much of your identity must have been tied to your success, especially as it pertained to what it was that you're building. And then I think about the bio that you sent me. And I think about how the bio that you sent me specifically calls out that you don't want to be known as the financial expert, and you don't want to be tied to your career as much as you want to be tied to who you are as a person, a father, a husband. And, a lot of times this topic comes up on the show with various people who've had different backgrounds, and I talk about, how we really need to, check ourselves around tying our identity to either our financial success or to our careers, because by putting that much of a weight of our identity on those matters, we can lose sight of the things that are really important, number one. But it could also lead to us spiraling when things, don't go well. And so one of the things that I want to ask you and kind of understand, and more so to give the listeners insight, is talk to me about when that reconciliation happened for you, probably later on, with regards to understanding that it's okay to be successful in your career. It's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to want, money and financial success. But who you are as a person, what it's going to say on your tombstone, what your book is going to say about you isn't, he was really successful. He opened up all these businesses. He made a lot of money. There's a lot more to it. So talk to me a little bit more about when that period of reconciliation happened for you.
Yeah. Well, I would say this, that, your job, your career, it's what you do. It's not who you are. And yeah, there can be overlap and parallels, and some of your listeners today might feel a little differently. But I would say that the majority of people don't want to be defined by their job. And the longer you do it, the more you and the job sort of merge together as one. I was always aware of that. And I think part of it came from being around the financial industry as a young kid, because my mom was in it for a long time. She got in it when I was about two, I guess. So she was in it for most of her life, and she's still in it. And I just saw other people that did it for 40, 50, 60 years. They'd get this giant plaque and then they would die. And I know they didn't get buried with that plaque. And yeah, they were great at what they did, but it's why they did it, right? So like I wanted to be a successful business owner because I wanted to have a great life and maximize my potential. And in the different businesses, as a personal trainer, I wanted to help people get in better shape. As a restaurateur, I wanted people to have healthier eating options. I wanted there to be a healthy fast restaurant on every corner, like next to McDonald's, because that's why people eat McDonald's, because it's easy and it's cheap. And so I was trying to create a healthy version of that, not so much to make millions of dollars, but because I wanted to help people with that. It was a problem. I was trying to solve it. The financial services business, I didn't want to get into it. I did because I knew that it did not have a salary. It was all commission based. And I knew that I could depend on myself. And I liked not having a ceiling. I was willing to give up, no floor, right? No income, because there was no ceiling. And I was okay to bet on myself. And it was obviously a really good move that fit me really well. But I did that because I needed to, almost like an arranged marriage. Like I had to make money. I just did. I had to make like $7,000 a month just to not go bankrupt and just to pay my bills. But once I paid off the debt, a couple of years into it, I started to transition from what I was doing to why I was doing it. Now that the debt was paid, and I started to like what I was doing a lot. I was helping people, and that was an important thing for me. I needed to help people to help myself. I needed to feel good about myself, and I could do that by helping other people with whatever their issue or problem was. And I did that, and I've done that for, over 20 years now. But throughout the last 10 or so years, it's like, okay, I love helping people in my office in South Jersey with their money, with retirement planning. But to me, it doesn't feel like it's enough. Like I honestly was feeling like it wasn't my full potential. If someone has an account earning 3%, I can get them 5%. That's great. But does that change the world? No, it helps them. So it was like, well, how can I have more of an impact, right? Without doing something stupid, right? Like just, selling my business or retiring like at 40 some years old. So I started to work on the book. And it was all about everything I learned and went through, the ups and downs in all these different industries, and how I could help more people while still helping my clients, but helping more people, not just in New Jersey, not just about fitness, not just about finance, but everything, right? Whatever people have questions about, their problems, what they're trying to do, where they're at, where they're trying to go, trying to help people with whatever is on their mind, right? And a lot of it is, okay, I'm here and I want to go there. Great. Like we talked about it before, the two-step formula. Figure out what needs to be done, then do it. A lot of people not only don't know where they want to go, which is the point B, their desired destination, A lot of people don't even know where they are. They just kind of wake up, and it's almost like you probably had that when you've traveled. You kind of wake up sometimes like, where am I? Am I home? Am I in a hotel? People, I think, do that sometimes on a regular basis because like they look in the mirror, who am I? They hear a kid crying down the hall. Oh my gosh, I'm a parent. I've been married for a decade. And so people just kind of, they're on the hamster wheel. They go through this. So you have to really stop. And I think it's important to take about 15 minutes a day. Just think, be with yourself. It could be in the car, it could be laying in bed for a little longer, you going for a walk or a run. Just think about where you're trying to go. Create as vivid a picture of where you want to go and get that image burned in your head like a tattoo in your brain. And then honestly assess, where are you relative to that? And think about it, look, every time you get in your car, I mean, other than a quick trip to like your kid's school or the grocery store, what do? You put into the GPS where you're trying to go. And if it doesn't connect to where you are currently, it doesn't know your current location, it's impossible to get to where you're trying to go. So you have to know your point A and you have to know your point B. And then once you do that, you try to figure out the most efficient route to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's so perfectly stated. I want to ask, because you brought up the the title of the book, Life Switch, earlier, and you talk about it in relation to when you had to liquidate and close things out with the fast food restaurant. Was that your your moment? Was that your mile 40 moment, let's call it, or era?
That was a low moment, having to close that down. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to shut this down and get into the financial business. For me, I call them. It's like your mile 40 moments. I call them life switch moments. And life switch is, I talk about electricity and connecting your wires, but it's about connecting your life switch moments, not just one, not just two, but multiple life switch moments that we've all had in our lives. You might have called them epiphanies, mile 40 moments, but these moments where you start to connect and click and wire things together, because when you have things wired together, you can flip the switch and then get that power to come on. But if wires aren't connected, the power is not coming on. So that was a really bad low point moment. But I guess from that moment, the switch flipping was, hey, my mom's in the financial services business, but she's not doing like 60% of what's out there. So it was like, okay, I can come into a business with no income limitation and I can do the things that she's not doing. So I can do it my own way because I don't want to just be my mom's son or, just be perceived as getting a handout. So it was those kinds of thoughts and thinking that got me to think, hey, financial services is actually the next and perfect move for me. And also going back to connect to other moments about wanting to help people, needing to help people to feel good about myself after not being such a great kid at times. And so a connection of those moments.
Yeah, let me elaborate a little further on that. Did you, at that point, with your back up against a wall, essentially have to find the potential that perhaps was, I don't think it was hidden, but you had to find your way out, right? You had to figure out how to claw your way out of the situation that you essentially put yourself in. And then through that, you uncovered, you're capable of a lot that perhaps you didn't think about, at the very onset of that original journey. And that's the way that I think about it with regards to sometimes in life when we go through these experiences, when we face these adverse circumstances that we had never seen coming, especially if we put ourselves in those situations, which you did in this case, you then reveal to yourself what you're truly capable of, especially as it pertains to the idea of a quote unquote comeback, right? Like you came back from it. Was there ever a doubt in your mind? I'm sure, when you were sitting in that therapist's office, that perhaps, you couldn't come back from it. And then ultimately, did you reveal, a new potential to yourself?
Yeah, good question. And it makes me think of something. There's moments where I have, even today, where it's like, you know what? I quit. Like, what if I just let it all go? And like, you can quit on things in your mind just to see it kind of play that out. as long as you don't actually quit for real in real life. So, in the therapist's office for that day, when the restaurant was failing and I was catatonic, it was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm dead. There's no future for me. And then I would just kind of simmer in that for like a minute and be like, no, like delete, reject, not doing that, but like I let myself entertain it for a minute, but I'm like, there's no way. So with financial services, so let me go back. So the restaurant, that was a choice, right? I did have a little money that I did inherit from my dad, and I did use that to be able to do the restaurant, right? I could have bought a house, I could have bought a nice car, but I wanted to do something bigger than myself. Didn't work out. Uh, but that was my choice. With the financial business, I didn't have a choice. I had to be successful. If I wasn't successful, I was going to be a failure, a complete failure. So even though I had failed, I understood that I had failed, um, but I didn't really like. I wasn't okay with it. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I lost. Right? In sports, you hate to lose, but sometimes you do. Right? Sometimes you can even lose in a championship season. And so I lost, but it was like, okay, I can just sit here and be a loser. I can be that guy that says, oh, I almost did this and, this happened and blame everybody, but I took responsibility. I tried this. It was amazing, but it ended up being a disaster, right? The dream turned into a complete nightmare. And it was up to me, it became my responsibility to dig out of it. No one else was going to do it for me. So I had to be successful. And I knew that. And it wasn't fun a lot of those days getting up and working really, really hard with the mental difficulty and baggage that came with it. But I just did it. And like I said before, got on kind of a streak of doing it. One, I wanted to keep the streak going. And two, I needed to. I saw the truth was that I can make this work. And when you see something, you have a much better chance of believing it, right? If you say, anyone's listening says, well, I want to make $1 million. Well, why? How are you going to do that? Can you see a clear vision of the path to get there and the sacrifice of what it's going to take to do that? When you see something, you believe it. And I saw my vision. I saw a path because I already found some early success, my hard work paying off in my first month in the business. And so it was like, look, that's it. You're going to decide, are you going to do that? Because that's probably going to work. Or are you not? And you're going to accept more failure. And I didn't want any more failure. It was my chance. I was young enough to have taken a swing and missed. I wasn't like, 50 or 60. But that was also the time to take risks. I didn't have kids yet. I wasn't quite married. But the restaurant, although it seemed like an absolute nightmare, and it ended up being a major blessing in disguise because I might have been successful if I even came into the financial business. But there's no way I would have had the success I had as quickly as I did and that I continued to build on because I wouldn't have needed to, right? If I was making $100,000, I would have probably been thrilled at 25 or 26. But that wasn't enough to do what I needed to do. So fortunately, I was smart enough to realize, like we said before, evolving and getting better and the checkpoints. Okay, the debt's paid off. Now what? Well, now you got to think about what you want to do. And that's when I looked at, again, building the business, not just making money or more money, but building a better, more efficient, high quality business that people would be attracted to. And I continued to do that for many, many years.
Is it fair to say that that experience played a significant role in how you now look at your kids and how you want to raise them? And I say that because again, we are very much shaped by those moments that perhaps I don't necessarily want to use the word traumatize us, but that impact us, that deeply and kind of bring us to that expose us, right? That expose our weaknesses essentially, right? And then we're there and we uncover what it is that we're truly capable of. And as a father, I think about this all the time, and I've talked about this several times on this show. It's like you want your children to get to those moments as much as you want to protect them from the vulnerability of those moments. So talk to me a little bit about, how that experience has now played a role in how you parent.
Yeah. Well, I've been very open with my kids about everything, including money, really for many years. And it's funny, my kids had a lot of good advice for me, even they were really young, 5 years old and 7. I would tell them about my issues in a way that they could understand them when they'd be in their car seats, and they would just shoot back this childlike, simplified thinking, and it was always obvious, like, oh yeah, things are really tough. I haven't been getting a lot of sleep, and it's a lot of work. It's really stressful. Like that, you should take a nap. I'm like, you're right. Like it's that simple. And so involving them early was helpful for actually them and me, which I think a lot of times us adults, we discount kids because, oh, they don't know anything. Well, you know what? Sometimes that's good, right? They're not jaded. They're not beat down from the world. And they have this refreshing take that anything's possible and you can do this and you can do that. And why not? Right? That kids say, why not? They haven't been taught doubt and disbelief yet. And we can learn a lot from them. But I share with them a lot of what I went through for a lot of reasons, but part of it is because we have a really nice life now. We have nice things, but I want them to understand that these things didn't just show up. Dad just didn't, doesn't go to work and people just, drop off money. Uh, there's a lot to it. So I wanted them to understand that. Also, I talk to them, I tell them things. There's an element where we're like, tell kids, well, just, whatever, just whatever. But like when you explain things to people, they understand you better. Like, I just think you're doing yourself a favor when you open up and you share with your spouse or significant other or your kids, your friends. Just talk to people, be honest, tell people what's going on. You never know where you're going to get guidance, advice, or that you might give someone else guidance or advice from something good or bad that you went through. So I share with them what I went through. I share with them what I do, how hard I work. They see it all the time. And to this day, they tell me when I'm tucking them in at night still, they said, Dad, like, thanks for everything that you're doing. Like they appreciate it. And also, one of the best things about the financial business and the success I've had is the ability to be flexible and be at all the kids' events. I mean, I've missed like 0 kids' events in all their years. And it's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. And not just because I'm checking the box, but I love going to my son's soccer games in the fall. I love seeing my daughter perform on a stage. And it would crush me if I couldn't be part of that. And they see that. They see that I work my butt off, but that's not the most important thing. That they feel loved, they feel that I'm there for them, and they appreciate it. I appreciate just being able to do it. And even the book, like they're like my biggest fans for it. They're telling their friends about it, and they're proud of me. And that's the thing, Bishoy, and anyone listening, like you don't have to be viewed by your kids a certain way. I tell people how old my kids are. Oh, they're 17, 15. They're like, oh my gosh, like good luck, you know? And like, I'm like, no, it's great. Like my kids are like some of like my best friends. I love being around them.
Yeah.
Uh, but it didn't just happen. It was my thought. Like, why can't I have that relationship? And I worked on it every day from day one. And here we are, but I involved them, I included them. And it just comes down to the fact that life is what you make of it, right? It's whatever you want. I'm not saying just because you want something, it's going to happen. But if you work at it, especially every day, right? There's a lot of time in every day. You really can chip away at making progress at whatever your goals are. And for me, I just figured, why can't I have it all? Why can't I have a successful business, a great marriage, great relationship with my kids, be able to be in my version of my best shape as I get into my mid and late 40s and so on. Just like you're doing these races and marathons, like why not? Why not do everything you want to do? You're going to wake up today and tomorrow anyway, hopefully. You might as well live the life you want to live, not 80% of it.
Yeah. No, life is short. Life is short. And I agree with you, 1,000%. How long were you working on the book?
Well, quick answer is this round 2 years. But prior to that, I started the book about 10 years ago. I typed it. I just wanted to share everything. I wanted to download everything in my brain on paper. I typed it. I saved it. I never opened it. And then it just hit me one day, a long time after, like, you know what? Let me open this up, read it, see what it looks like. And I opened it up and I didn't remember writing almost any of it. And I said, you know what? I think this is something I can work with. Let me go from just a story about my life to, turning it into messages, lessons, and kind of more of a self-help theme. So it's a combination. It's entertaining and inspiring at the same time. It's my story, but I'm telling all the things that I've learned that I think people should know about so they can live their life and have that most efficient route from A to B that I was talking about, saving people time, money, and misery. And that's the thing that I want to be known for, is being the father, the husband to my kids, my wife. But I want to leave these lessons, this wisdom, this knowledge to other people, so there's more value. My restaurant's failing was terrible, but there's more value that's being extracted from it because I'm sharing the story about it with the world, so they can have a better experience in their lives. And to me, that makes me feel more alive than anything. And it's, yourself, from having the books, having someone across the country, across the world read this and benefit from it. I mean, that's worth way more than any amount of money I might make
Oh,
from a book.
absolutely. I mean, I think, and I've spoken about this before, you know, the number one reason why I think the books were successful, in particular, my first book, Break Barriers, because that was the first book, and that was the book that I think really kind of, it was my story on paper. And and I tell people all the time, the reason it was successful is because when I wrote it, I didn't write it with any incentive. Like, I didn't actually care if people bought the book. All I cared about was that the one person who needed to read the message got a hold of the book. And I think, a lot of times in life, it's like, if you don't chase, those other items, they will come, right? Like, they're a natural byproduct. Like, financial success is a natural byproduct. Like we were talking about earlier, right? Like, if you operate with your clients with integrity and with good purpose, and you're looking out for their well-being, and you're doing the right thing, the financial success is a byproduct. And that was my entire intention with Break Barriers, and I think that's why it was successful. And I believe that anytime anyone comes to me now to talk to me about writing a book, and I ask them, I'm like, what are your goals? Are your goals to sell 10, 15, 20,000 copies? Because if that's your goal, then I ask you to take a step back, because you need to reframe. I'm not telling you you're not going to sell the 10, 15, 20,000 copies. I'm just telling you, reframe the goal so the goal is more pure. Because if it's a more intentional and pure goal, the copies will be a byproduct of it.
Yep.
And
Totally.
that was my that was my perspective on it. Just out of curiosity, was the title always going to be Life Switch?
No, it was. I had the longest list of titles, and I would think of it when I'd be out for a run. And I would repeat it in my head so I didn't forget. I was trying to tie in different things. So I was going to use the term appreciate because, in financial
Sure,
jargon,
appreciation.
assets
Yeah,
appreciate, but it was also appreciate your assets. So appreciate your assets, or asset appreciation. But the assets I'm referring to in the book a lot are about your head and your heart, right? It's why you do things and who you really are, appreciating those assets, like those talents. Like, I didn't have any talents when I was younger, but I liked working hard. I could work hard. I could really dig in and get in a possessed like state when I was working on something I was passionate about. Like, that's an asset. That was a winning characteristic I had that I never really knew about it. But you're right about that. It's about why you're doing something. Like, I wrote this book to inspire and entertain people. It's that simple. And obviously there's all, I want them to know this and know that. But that's why I did it. I'm not doing it because, oh, I want to say I wrote a book and tout that, or hey, I sold this many copies of the book. I want to help people with some of these things that we talked about today. And the only way to do that is to have as many people read or listen to the book as possible. And I don't even know if you know this, but I just announced the other day that if I am fortunate enough to have 1 million readers of Life Switch, I'm going to write out a check for $1 million.
let's go. Well, you got one reader here.
All right. All right. That's a start, right? But you
Yeah.
know what? It is possible, right? It's unlikely, but I don't care about that part. What I care about is it is possible. Plenty of people have sold millions of books, but I'm not doing it to sell 1 million books. I'm doing it to inspire and entertain a lot of people, and for a good cause. So someone might read the book and say, I love it. This really is going to change my life. Perfect. Someone might say, it was okay. I liked it, didn't love it. Someone might say, I hated it. But as long as people are getting the book, they are working towards a 7-figure check getting written. What's actually going to happen is it's going to be the top 10 charities that get voted for, which can be voted on my website. The top 10 charities are going to each get a check for $100,000 each. I thought that would be a better way to do it, but I've never been so excited to write a check in my life.
That's amazing.
I'm so excited for that moment. I can clearly see it. I believe it's possible, and I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen.
That's amazing. Out of curiosity, because I cannot see through the screen, what's the subtitle under Life Switch in the book?
Oh, it's about the 3 Ps: how to experience the power of living on by discovering your potential, passion, and purpose.
I love that. I have 3 Ps. So, and one of them aligns. Actually, wait, what are your 3 Ts? Ps, repeat them.
Potential, passion, and purpose.
Okay. Mine is perspective, purpose, and patience. So we got one that aligns, which is awesome.
Well, I got perspective is a whole chapter in the book and a very important thing. And patience goes into my balance chapter quite a bit as well.
There you
But
go.
hey, look, there's a lot of good P's out there. It's not, those are just the 3 P's that I broke the book out in 3 sections on. But look, this is not everything, but it's everything that I want to share right now. But everything that you're sharing with your listeners, your readers, I mean, it's all great stuff, right? If we can keep putting good into the world and it spreads, this world can be a better place, and that's part of the mission.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. Joel, last question for you. When does the book come out for the listeners?
Yep.
And where can they get it?
Yeah, the book comes out. It's a hardcover book, and we're going to have the audiobook. They're both coming out October 21st. You can get it at Barnes & Noble. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Walmart. You can go to my website and get it, which is bookjoelsteele.com with an E on the end, bookjoelsteele.com. But you can get it anywhere on October 21st.
Amazing. Amazing. So listeners out there, go check it out, pick up a copy, follow Joel on LinkedIn, reach out to him. He's incredibly personable. And Joel, I just want to say thank you for coming on, for opening up with us, for being vulnerable, for quite honestly being the voice that I thought you were going to be, and for giving this audience exactly what they needed. So thank you so much for coming on Mile 40 today.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast, and let's keep the conversation going.
You got it, my friend. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode of the Mile 40 podcast, go ahead, subscribe, leave a review, and share the word. Thank you for being a part of the Mile 40 family. And let's unite in showing the world that comebacks are always greater than setbacks.